Welcome to Coffee with Pastor. I'm David Whitaker. I'm pastor of Hope Tabernacle, and we want to welcome you to our leadership training class. This is normally we'll have this class in our sanctuary at Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock. And so if you're joining here on live on Facebook or on YouTube, you're watching it. Maybe you could watch it another time. But anyway, at this time, I always try to train. We focus our leadership training to our department heads, our department ministry leadership. And but really it's open for everybody, because we want to make sure that everybody in the church has an opportunity to receive leadership training. So as I'm going through this, I just want you to know who this is geared toward, our department leaders. Earlier this year, I told our department heads to develop a team. Find some leadership in the church, some up-and-coming leaders, and develop a team. And I want to say this, if you're a pastor, if you think that you're the only leader in your church because you're the pastor, I'll tell you, you're missing out on some real talent and some real ministry opportunities in your church, and even an opportunity for your church to grow. Everybody wants to learn how to make their church grow, and I'd say one of the main things is developing a broader base. And so that's what we try to do here at Hope Tabernacle, is try to broaden the base where it's not all resting on one person. It's not my church, it's our church, that sort of thing. And Carlton Kuhn said this earlier this week in a little video that he put out, that if you want your church to grow above the average number, which would be, 70 to 120 folks, if you want it to grow any larger than that, you're going to have to broaden your base. And that means you're going to have to employ more leadership. And I don't mean like paid employees. Obviously, we're all volunteering, but you know what I'm talking about. So the question is, how do we find leaders? Well, sometimes leaders develop, they just show up. I always say this, when I worked in the secular world, we used to be able to put an ad in the paper and help wanted, and people would show up, and we would go through a process and interview, and we'd hire who we wanted. Well, in the church, unfortunately, we get who God sends us, and that's who we're stuck with. Sometimes that's good and bad, right? If we're looking at people like us or myself, sometimes that's bad, and it takes a lot of work for the leaders to train. But sometimes we got great folks that show up that are already trained. They're already great leaders. But I would say the majority, you're not going to have that. And so you're going to have to train, go through the process of training leaders. It's the reason why we have Coffee with Pastors. The reason why we have leadership training on a weekly basis is because we don't want to miss the opportunity to train up a generation of leadership. So simply, sometimes you have to develop them. It's like a savings account. Sometimes people say, well, I don't have enough money to start a savings account. Well, that's the reason why you need to start a savings account, is so you can get some money set aside. You got to start right now, a penny a day. You just got to start. You got to start somewhere. You got to start now. So when do you start training leaders? When you get leaders? When you get more folks? No, you start training who you have. Start looking at your pool of leadership possibilities. And you might be looking at folks that are, 15 or 12 or even 5 years old. Maybe you've got a 5-year-old in your church that is interested in becoming a ministry leader. Well, begin training right there. And just start anywhere, somewhere, but you got to start somewhere. Anyway, so how to identify some leaders. So as you're looking through your congregation and department head, as I said, if you're a department head and you're looking for a team, to develop a team, you want to get some leaders. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 characteristics of leadership that you're going to be looking for. Number 1, you're going to be looking for people who are faithful. And when I say faithful, I don't necessarily mean showing up for church. Obviously, faithfulness is showing up for church. You want to make sure that you're going to be employing people into your ministry team that are, there when the doors are open. But also, but more than that, also not just for church, but for other ministry opportunities, and not just for their ministry opportunities. So faithfulness to the calling, faithfulness to the vision of the church, not just their vision. Let me give you an example. If you've got a Sunday school department, Sunday school teacher, for instance, and they show up every time there's a Sunday school event, but they never show up on any other event. They don't come to the ladies' meeting or the men's meetings or the prayer meetings or anything else. They just show up when it's their ministry. Well, that's not being faithful to the vision, and that's not leadership. They might be great at managing the process of Sunday school, but they may not be a good leader if they're only focusing on their own ministry, if that makes sense. So, we have a lot of folks that look for excuses to miss out of ministry opportunities, like church service, for one. You're looking for an excuse. My tire's low, not sure I got enough money to get gas and back home and work tomorrow, or, and you may have some good excuses, coming out of all that. But the people who are faithful, they're not looking for excuses to stay out. They're looking for opportunities to defy all odds to get there. And you know what I'm talking about. Those who show up and say, I put the last dollar that I had in the gas tank to get to church. And I'm just waiting on God. He's going to supply the need. And you know it. You've been there. You know what I'm talking about. And God does supply the need. And you will have money to get to work tomorrow. But that's what I'm talking about, faithfulness. So you got people in your church that are faithful. You mark them. Those are the ones that are going to be joining the leadership team real soon. Number 2, the next characteristic of a great team leader is going to be trustworthy. And I don't mean so much as, like they got to tell the truth, obviously. But there's qualities of character that you can tell if we're going to be able to trust this person. Those who ask questions without a hidden agenda. Let me quantify that statement. Questions that they ask are pure. They're genuinely asking a question. They genuinely don't know. They're looking for information. They're looking for knowledge. But sometimes these people that ask questions that really is a statement of dissatisfaction, then that's not a pure question. So you got to question the motive of that person. Now that doesn't mean you disqualify them. That just means that there's some more training that might need to be done there. These people who are trustworthy are the ones that they're not motivated by crowns. They're not looking for accolades from the pulpit. They're not looking for an office. I mean, literally an office. You don't want people saying, well, I've got to have a title. Give me a business card. Give me an office. I want a space in the church. People know that this is my domain, They're not trustworthy. When I say, I'm not calling those folks liars or cheats. What I'm saying is their motives would be self-centered, not outward. I always say this. I think Socrates, in fact, I was typing this in the computer the other day looking for some proverbs, and I quote this all the time. I didn't realize, but Socrates actually said, and I'm going to misquote it, but it's something that goes along that true wisdom is when a man knows that he does not know it all. That's true wisdom, and the scripture would play that out too. But I always say that, and what I'm saying I mean that we have to realize that we're not the know-it-alls, and that when we find out that other people have information, other people have insight that we don't have, and we're constantly learning from other people. This is a pure motive. This is being trustworthy. Ministry begins when you remove yourself from the equation of life. And let me say this, explain it this way. If I'm going to train up leadership for my purpose, so that my church grows, so that my load gets lighter, that's not trustworthy. That motive is impure. It's self-centered. But if I'm going to train you, a leader, for your benefit, so that you get the crown, so that you get the accolades, so that you excel, that you become greater and better than I've ever even dreamed of, then I've accomplished my job as a leader. Again, if I'm going to train people for my benefit, I may be a good manager. That's a good manager of process. I know how to get things done. But if I'm going to lead people, that means that the people are going to develop under me. That is the quality of people that you're looking for, the characteristic. So the last point I want to talk to you about, the last characteristic, is finding people in your pool of opportunities that are influencers. Influencing people is way different than, say, managing a process. And we've talked about that already. But when looking for a leader, looking for somebody who's got great influence, what you'll want to do is you'll want to employ a group project, some group project in the church or in your ministry or in your office or whatever it is, and then step back and watch everyone interact. Now, I know as department leader, pastors, whatever, we always want to lead the meeting and talk and give direction and all that. But it's good sometimes to sit back and just allow the people to communicate. So what you're looking for is you're looking for the person in the room that begins to ask a lot of questions. Again, the pure questions, the motive questions that are pure. And also the one who begins to listen to the voices of the others, allows people to speak, takes it to heart, recommunicates with that person what they were thinking and maybe their thought process on the problem solving issue, whatever it is. Notice how I'm not saying the person who talks the most or the person that takes the meeting, the person who ramrods the discussion. That might be a great manager, somebody that you might want to employ to get something done later. If you got a project that you need to make sure it gets done and it doesn't matter if heads are going to roll, you just need it to happen. You need it to happen now. You're going to employ that person. But if you're looking for a leader, somebody who's going to be leading people, then it's a completely different person. You're looking for the influencer, somebody who has influence. This person who's going to have influence is going to have influence and impact on people, not because of title, but because of respect. When people know that they are respected, that knows that this person knows he doesn't know it all, that means he's got wisdom. And when this person, he or she speaks, everyone listens. That is the person with great influence. You have found a great leader when you found the person who has influence. Many people have written stories about it. I could tell you stories. John C. Maxwell, Stan Gleason's got a great story about it. He took over a church, and he tells a story about how he was having a board meeting with his new board, and he said about 10 minutes into that meeting, he says, I knew who was in charge. It wasn't him. He said, it was a guy in the back corner. He'd been there the longest, but he says, whenever that man spoke, he said, everybody in the church listened. So he knew, he says, I got to get this guy on my side or get this guy because this is the man that's got the best influence. So he became the greatest leader. He was a great leader in the church. So we've got great leaders. They're all in our congregations. And a lot of them already employ all three of these characteristics. So notice how I did not say that you're looking for leaders because they have talent or because they have knowledge or expertise. None of those qualities are listed in leadership. Why? Because all of those can be trained. It's hard to train leadership skills. Hopefully I'm doing that now, helping us all take an inward look, kind of look at these three characteristics and figure out how we need to improve. But when you've got folks on your pews that are already displaying these three qualities, you've got great leaders already. Pour into them as much as you can. Thank you for joining me today, and God bless you. We'll see you next week for Leadership Training Coffee with Pastor in Jesus' name.